April 4, 2016. A storm sat over Eastwood like a blanket of dread. It had rained all night. Not just a drizzle, but a constant, pounding torrent. Like the sky was angry. Like it knew something was coming. Most of the town was still asleep. The streets were empty, slick with reflections of amber streetlights. Even the neighborhood dogs didn't bark that night. There was only rain, and the low hum of wind moving through empty spaces. But inside the Eastwood Community Church, something stirred. At 3:47 a.m., a figure stepped into the hallway just beyond the main chapel. Caught in the grainy low-light feed of a dusty security camera, they moved slowly, deliberately, as if they had all the time in the world. They wore all black, thick boots, heavy gloves, knee pads, and a helmet that covered their entire face. Across their chest was a white patch. It said one word, bold and unforgiving: police. But this was no officer. And this wasn't a routine sweep. It was something else. The figure carried a tool, something metallic. A small pry bar, or a hammer. They dragged it along the wall as they walked. Light scratches marked the plaster like scars. There was no sign of panic. No rush. No urgency. Only patience. The kind of patience that comes from knowing something, or someone, is on their way. They passed through empty rooms, Sunday school classrooms, storage closets, staff offices. They peeked in each one, not searching, just waiting. The rain outside grew louder. Thunder grumbled in the distance. Inside, the power flickered once, but held. The hallway lights buzzed dimly above, casting long shadows as the figure moved, their boots thudding softly against the linoleum floor. A motion-activated camera caught them pausing by a stained-glass window. The image: a shepherd watching over a flock. The figure stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Still silent. Then they moved on. At 3:59 a.m., they vanished into a back corridor, one not covered by cameras. Not anymore. That particular feed had gone out a week earlier. The maintenance team hadn't gotten around to fixing it. At 4:03 a.m., a vehicle pulled into the small lot out front. A silver Toyota RAV4. Its headlights cut through the fog. A woman stepped out. Missy Harper, 39, boot camp instructor, mother, tired but always smiling. She wore leggings, a black hoodie, and running shoes. Her hair was tied in a messy bun. She carried 2 gym bags and a portable speaker under one arm. She jogged through the rain toward the church doors, fumbling for her key. She didn't see the dark figure inside. Didn't notice the small scratch marks near the entrance. Didn't sense the shift in air as she opened the door and walked inside. The alarm chirped. She keyed in the code like she'd done 100 times before. The church fell silent again. She turned on the lights in the foyer. Dropped one bag by the pews. Let out a little sigh. It was just another Monday morning. She had clients arriving in less than an hour. She liked to get everything set up in advance. Mats, weights, cones, water. She never missed a session. Never showed up late. Never left anyone waiting. She didn't know someone was already there, watching. She headed down the hallway, toward the gym area. The lights buzzed back to life one by one as she flipped each switch. The building came alive around her. But behind her, somewhere in the shadows, so did something else. At 4:07 a.m., the internal cameras caught her walking past the chapel, humming to herself. She was smiling. At 4:09, her figure disappeared into the gym wing, just out of view, just around the corner from where the camera stopped. And after that, nothing. No scream, no crash, no sign of struggle, only silence, and the echo of a closing door. At 4:58 a.m., the first client arrived. They rang the bell. No answer. The door was unlocked. The lights were on. The mats were laid out. But Missy was gone. Her name was Missy Harper. She was 39 years old, a fitness coach, and a single mom to a 15-year-old daughter named Hannah. She used to joke that she wasn't raising a kid. She was raising a hurricane in sneakers. They had matching water bottles, morning routines, and the kind of bond you only see in people who've walked through fire together. Because Missy had walked through fire. A few years earlier, she'd packed up everything she owned into a U-Haul, left a failed marriage behind, and started over in Eastwood, Texas. No friends. No job lined up. Just her, Hannah, and a borrowed treadmill. It wasn't easy. At first, she cleaned houses during the day and took online classes at night. She saved up every spare dollar. Slept on the couch so Hannah could have her own bed. And somewhere between exhaustion and rent notices, she got certified as a personal trainer. That was her escape. Fitness. Not just the workouts, but the way it made her feel. Strong. In control. Like maybe her life hadn't completely unraveled, just rewoven into something new. By the time she turned 38, she had landed her own early morning boot camp program, hosted 3 times a week in the basement of Eastwood Community Church. It wasn't a gym. There were no mirrors, no treadmills, no music blasting from the walls. Just a linoleum floor, folding chairs pushed to the side, and a battered stereo Missy brought from home. But to her it was perfect. She called it First Light Fitness. Because her class started before the sun rose, before the town came alive, before anyone else believed in themselves that day, Missy did it for them. Her clients weren't professional athletes. They were single moms, nurses, store clerks, high school teachers. People who didn't have time during the day but still wanted to feel strong. And Missy never let them down. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 5 a.m. sharp. Rain or shine, she was always the first one there. Even if she had to walk in a storm, she'd arrive at 4 a.m., unpack the gear, set up the cones, lay out the mats, write the day's workout on a whiteboard with a blue dry erase marker. She brought towels for everyone, water bottles for the ones who forgot, encouragement for the ones who almost didn't come. They called her tough, but kind. Missy'll kick your butt and then hug you after, someone once said. And it was true. She believed in hard work, but she believed in people more. Her daughter Hannah used to tease her. Who wakes up at 3:30 for fun, Mom? Missy would laugh and respond, someone who's too stubborn to stay down. But even Hannah knew how proud her mom was. She had turned her pain into purpose. She didn't just teach lunges and squats. She taught discipline. She taught healing. She taught people how to rebuild. The Eastwood Community Church became more than a venue. It became her second home. She knew every creak in the hallway, which lights buzzed when turned on, where the best acoustics were for the warm-up music. The pastor trusted her with keys. The staff waved when she passed. The janitor always left the mop bucket near the door so she wouldn't trip in the dark. Even the neighbors knew Missy's silver RAV4 by the way it glided into the parking lot before sunrise. That morning, April 4, 2016, was no different. She got up at 3:30 a.m., had her usual half cup of coffee, kissed Hannah on the forehead, grabbed her gym bags, and left. She drove through the storm, wipers squeaking against the windshield, soft music playing on the radio, some old 90s ballad she loved. She pulled into the church lot at exactly 4:03 a.m. Still raining, still dark. She parked under the floodlight, grabbed her speaker and mats from the trunk, and jogged up to the church entrance with a quick laugh to herself. She always laughed when it rained, like the sky was daring her to stay in bed, and she refused. She unlocked the door. The hallway greeted her with familiar stillness. She keyed in the alarm code. Beep, beep, beep. Silence again. She turned on the front lights, dropped her gear near the benches, took off her hoodie. The building felt warm despite the storm outside. Comforting. Familiar. She walked down the hallway, flipped on more lights, set up the stereo. Her class would arrive in less than an hour. 6 clients, all women. One was a new mom. Another was recovering from a breakup. 2 were co-workers who always pretended to hate burpees. Missy knew their stories, their insecurities, their wins. She was more than a coach. She was their anchor. And on that rainy Monday she had every intention of being exactly that. She didn't know anything was wrong. She didn't know anyone else was inside. She didn't hear footsteps, didn't see shadows, didn't feel the shift in the air when someone else entered the building minutes before. She had no reason to be afraid. To her, it was just another session. Another chance to make someone's day better. Another quiet moment before the world woke up. She smiled to herself, focused, ready. What she didn't know was that someone else had been waiting. Not for the workout, not for motivation, not for healing, but for her. At 4:10 a.m., Missy walked into the main room. She flipped on the overhead lights, which buzzed faintly and filled the space with a cold white glow. She unzipped her gym bag, laid down 3 yoga mats, and positioned them in perfect symmetry like she always did. 2 rows, slight spacing between each. Then she plugged in her old Bluetooth speaker. Her phone connected with a cheerful beep. She scrolled through her playlist and tapped the usual warm-up track. Soft pop music trickled out into the empty space. Outside, the storm hadn't stopped. Rain tapped the church windows like fingers. The wind howled, distant but constant. Inside, everything felt still. The security cameras in the main hallway showed nothing unusual. No movement. No shadows. Just Missy moving confidently with purpose. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the figure was still inside. Somewhere in the building. A storage room. A dark hallway. A janitor's closet. Somewhere close. Close enough to hear her. To listen. At 4:18 a.m., Missy walked down the back hallway. She needed 2 more kettlebells from the supply closet. The hallway was longer than she remembered. Or maybe it just felt that way that morning. The ceiling lights above her flickered once. Just a blink. A pulse. She paused. Looked up. Then behind her. Nothing. No sound. No shadow. Just silence. She exhaled through her nose and kept walking. At the end of the hallway she reached the supply door. She pulled it open, reached inside for the kettlebells. That's when she heard it. A soft click behind her. She turned. Fast. Nothing. Just the hallway. Still empty. But she was sure she heard it. Sound like a lock. Or a latch. Or a doorknob turning and then gently falling back into place. She stood still for a moment. One kettlebell in her hand. Heart suddenly thudding harder than before. Her fingers tightened around the handle. She looked around. Still, nothing. The hallway lights had stopped flickering. Everything looked normal. But something didn't feel right. Back in the main room the music was still playing, faint and bouncy at odds with the stillness. Missy shook her head, whispering to herself, "Get it together. You're tired. That's all." She carried the weights back. At 4:22 a.m., she started setting up cones for a warm-up drill. Her body moved out of habit, but her mind was elsewhere. She glanced toward the far hallway every few seconds. Her ears tuned in more than usual, searching for something that didn't belong. Then, 4:25 a.m. Her Bluetooth speaker disconnected. Just cut off. No warning. The music stopped mid-beat. Total silence. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Bluetooth connection lost. She blinked. Tapped it. Waited. No reconnection. She walked over to the speaker. Held the power button. It flashed blue, then red, then nothing. She looked at her phone again. No devices nearby. She looked up. The lights above the front room dimmed for half a second. Then they returned. Missy whispered, "That's weird." She reached down to pick up her phone again when she heard it. A footstep. Not accidental. Not rushed. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. One. Then another. From the hallway she had just come down. The same hallway that had felt too long. Too quiet. She froze. Listen. Another step. She looked toward the hallway. Nothing there. But she knew what footsteps sounded like. She trained people. She studied their movements. These weren't echoes. They weren't pipes. They were feet. On tile. Coming closer. "Hello," she called out. Her voice cracked slightly. Barely. She tried to clear her throat. Tried again. "Is someone here?" No answer. She walked halfway toward the hallway. Didn't enter. Just stood near the threshold. The hallway looked darker than before. Like the light at the end had gone out. Or been turned off. She reached for the switch on the wall. Clicked it up and down twice. Nothing changed. That's when she noticed it. The small exit sign that had always glowed red at the far end was out. Dark. And the camera in the corner. The one above the hallway entrance. Its tiny green light was gone too. Missy's brows furrowed. The camera had always been on. Always blinking. Even during storms. She backed away. Her phone had no signal. Just one bar, and it was dropping. She turned toward her gym bag. She was going to pack up. Go home. Text the group to cancel. Something didn't feel right. She grabbed her keys. Slung the strap of her bag over her shoulder. The hallway behind her stayed quiet. No more footsteps. No more flickering. Just silence again. But it wasn't the kind that comforted. It was the kind that listened back. She was halfway to the door when the storage closet door creaked. It was faint. Too faint. But she heard it. She turned around slowly. The door, just left of the hallway entrance, was now slightly open. It hadn't been. She was sure of that. The room behind it was pitch black. She squinted. Held her breath. She whispered, "Hello?" And for the first time, she felt it. Not just fear. Not paranoia. Presence. Someone was in there. Watching. Waiting. The wind howled outside. The rain lashed harder against the church walls. And Missy, standing alone in the center of that big silent room, had one hand on her keys, and the other slowly reaching for her phone again. But this time she didn't whisper anything. She just listened. To the storm. To the silence. To the breath that didn't belong to her. It wasn't just the hallway that had gone dark. was the plan. Missy wasn't the only one in the building. And it wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a burglary. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. Whoever was inside knew her. They knew she showed up before sunrise. They knew she turned the lights on first. They knew she walked down that back hallway to get more weights every Monday. They knew every step. This was never about what was inside the church. It was about her. And now they were just steps away. 4:28 a.m. Somewhere between the silence and her suspicion, something shifted. The storage door she'd seen ajar was now wide open. The room behind it completely dark. She took a step back. Her foot brushed against something. She looked down. One of the kettlebells she'd taken earlier was on the ground, lying on its side. She hadn't dropped it. It was in the corner before. Now it was in her path. Her eyes widened. Adrenaline kicked in. She turned to run toward the main door. But something caught her bag strap. A sharp tug pulled her back. She screamed, briefly, before a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. Her phone slipped out of her pocket. The flashlight was still on. It hit the ground, spun, stopped with the beam pointing at the hallway wall. The cameras never saw what happened. Someone had disconnected them. Unplugged the hallway feeds hours earlier. But what they didn't capture, the building told in clues. Later, police would find signs of a struggle. A toppled bench, a cracked floor tile, and a thin trail of blood, small like a scrape at first, leading toward the utility room. By the time Missy's class started arriving at 4:58 a.m., the rain had slowed. The sky was still dark, but the storm had passed. 3 people pulled into the parking lot, chatting and yawning. They noticed the front door was already unlocked. The lights inside were on. The mats were perfectly arranged. The cones were in place. "Maybe she's in the restroom," one of them said. They waited a minute. Then 5. They called her name. No response. One of the women walked toward the back hallway. She paused when she saw Missy's phone on the floor, flashlight still glowing against the wall. She picked it up. The screen was cracked, smudged with what looked like dirt or blood. "Missy?" she called out again. Still nothing. That's when she opened the storage room door. She froze. Her scream echoed through the church. Missy was there, lying on the ground, unconscious. Her arms were scraped, her face swollen. One side of her temple was bleeding slowly. She had fought back. There were marks on her knuckles, a bruise on her shoulder. She had fought hard. But someone had overpowered her. Paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. She was rushed to the hospital. She wasn't dead, but she was barely hanging on. She drifted in and out of consciousness, couldn't speak, couldn't recall what happened. But beside her, tucked neatly next to a rolled-up yoga mat, was an envelope, black, unsealed. No address, no fingerprint, no name. Just 3 words written in thick red ink on the front. "You were warned." Inside the envelope was a printed photo. Not from that morning. From a month earlier. It showed Missy standing in front of her car in the same church parking lot. She was smiling, looking down at her phone, completely unaware. The picture had been taken from a distance. From inside another vehicle, it seemed. Someone had been watching her. For weeks. The police launched an immediate investigation. The attacker had left no DNA, no fingerprints, no footprints, thanks to the rain. No security footage captured the actual attack. But the clues told a different story. The power to the cameras in the hallway had been manually unplugged. The speaker interference, the flickering lights, intentional. The way the storage door had been left open, calculated. Whoever did this wanted her afraid. And they didn't take her life. They made sure she woke up to the message. Her phone had been wiped. Not digitally, but physically. The attacker had smashed it against the floor, damaging it just enough to prevent tracking. But something survived in the cloud. A string of anonymous messages sent to her 2 weeks earlier. "Stop digging. Don't ask again. You think you're safe in public?" The number was fake. Traced to a burner app. No origin. But the pattern was clear. This wasn't personal. This was about something she had found out. In the days that followed, Missy regained the ability to speak. She said she didn't recognize the person. They wore all black. Spoke no words. Only grabbed. Dragged. But she said one thing that gave everyone chills. "They waited. They were waiting for me. Like they knew I'd come alone." And she was right. No money was taken. No valuables missing. Nothing vandalized. It wasn't about theft. It was a message. But who sent it? And what was she warned about? She never told anyone what she might have uncovered. If she knew something, she kept it quiet. And now she was afraid to say more. She moved towns 2 months later. Quit coaching. Changed her number. Told people she needed a fresh start. But every time she locked a door, every time she walked to her car, she checked behind her. Because the warning wasn't just written on paper. It was written in fear. And fear doesn't go away. Missy survived. Just barely. She spent 3 days in the hospital. Doctors called it a miracle. A fractured skull, 2 broken ribs, and a deep laceration stretching across her shoulder. 12 stitches. No internal bleeding. She regained consciousness on Wednesday morning. Her eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above her wasn't the one she remembered. White walls. Monitors. Silence. Her daughter Hannah sat in the corner holding her hand. Tears streaming down a face trying to stay strong. Missy whispered just one word. Boot. The nurse leaned in. She repeated it. Boot. The glove. And finally, police. Fragments. That's all she could remember. A black boot stepping beside her mat. A gloved hand grabbing her wrist. A single flash of light reflecting off a chest label. Police. But there was no badge. No voice. No warning. Days passed. Her memory returned in flashes. Not enough to identify anyone, but enough to recognize a feeling. Not fear. Recognition. A month before the attack, Missy had filed a formal complaint. A former trainee from her boot camp sessions had crossed boundaries. At first he asked for advice outside class. Then personal questions. Then he started showing up early, before she unlocked the doors. One night he waited in the parking lot. Just sitting there. She approached his car. He said he just wanted to talk. She backed away. Called the police. They interviewed him. But he had an alibi. Said he was simply confused, emotionally overwhelmed after a breakup. No threats. No texts. No violence. The case was closed. But Missy never truly felt safe again. She changed her locks. Deleted old photos. Stopped posting her schedule online. But she didn't cancel her classes. She told herself, I won't live in fear. And for a while, she didn't. Until April 4th. The man was never arrested. Never named. Never seen again. And though Missy never pointed fingers, she carried the weight of that report in her bones. Not as blame, but as a reminder that speaking up doesn't always mean being heard. And sometimes, being right doesn't mean being believed. The church installed new cameras. A new alarm system. 2 motion sensors in the hallway. One by the rear entrance. Missy never went back to teach. Not once. She moved to Colorado later that summer. Took Hannah with her. They settled in a small town where no one knew her name. She found a new gym. Worked front desk. No classes. Number 5 a.m. sessions. Just peace. Or what looked like peace. Hannah, now 17, once told a friend. Mom still wakes up before sunrise. She checks the doors. The cameras. Sometimes she walks the halls like she's looking for something. But she never says what. Some mornings, Missy still places mats down in her living room. Not for clients. Just herself. She moves through stretches slowly. Breathing deeply. Eyes flicking toward the window. Checking shadows. She's never forgotten. Not the silence. Not the footsteps. Not the feeling of being watched by someone who said nothing at all. And the black envelope? She keeps it. Locked away. Tucked inside a box of old photos. The 3 words on it still haunt her. You were warned. Was it that man? Someone else? Something deeper? She may never know. But she lives with the answer that no answer brings. The case remains open. Police still have the envelope. The photo. The boots captured on camera. The odd, limping gait of a figure moving through sacred space like it meant nothing. They followed leads. Hundreds of them. But no fingerprints. No facial recognition. No name. Just a stormy night. A single woman. And a church that never felt the same again. No other attacks followed. No copycats. No notes. It was as if the message had been delivered, and that was enough. Missy learned to live with it. To sleep again. To drive again. To smile at strangers. But inside something changed. Not broken. Just reshaped. Hardened in places where it used to be soft. The world didn't stop. Boot camps continued. Church doors reopened. People moved on. But some mornings, in the quiet, the memory still steps through the doorway before she does. She'll never know who was behind that helmet. Or what they truly wanted. But she knows this. I wasn't meant to die. I was meant to remember. Missy walked into that church to help people grow stronger. She never expected someone would try to break her instead. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think twice about the quiet corners of your life, or reminded you how thin the line is between safety and vulnerability, then subscribe to this channel. Because we tell stories that leave more than just questions. We tell the ones that leave a mark. Tap the bell so you never miss a mystery. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, the scariest stories are the ones that almost happened to you.